And here we are. Uh, Finally, after a long time, I've been trying to get a hold of you for a while.
Good to
Um,
be here.
Now, we'll start off. Have everybody tell us who you are and what you do. And
Sure. My name is Jason Robinette, and I do a lot of different things. But I guess the reason I'm here is my game design work, um, which is ongoing and been going for a number of years. I've worked on a lot of different projects, mostly behind the scenes, consulting and doing mechanic improvements and reviews and things. For physical games, for digital games, a number of different things. And I've had a few solo designs that have come out, which the topic of today is primarily for Conan, um, and working on trying to bring it back. So that's where we're
yeah,
at.
good. Yeah, I unfortunately came into Conan pretty late. Um, just this year, as a matter of fact, I found out about it.
Hmm.
Uh, but I thought it was really an interesting thing, and I just wanted to get you on and ask you a few questions and see. I noticed you are quite possibly one of the most active developers, designers on the BGG forums, because I don't think there's been a post where I haven't seen you responding with somebody.
I'm always trying to be there. You said sort of late to the game and discovered it. Like that happens a lot. The primary problem with the way the game was released is there was almost no marketing around it at all. And so to this day, I'll get an email at least once a month from somebody going, "Hey, I just found this. I never heard of it before. Um, you know, can I find it? Where can I get it? How can you help? Whatever." So yeah, I want to be there because I feel like the publisher basically abandoned them, and abandoned the game. Um, so yeah, it's a bit of a sore spot, to be honest, because I feel like it just never really got a fair shake, especially when you consider that subsequent Conan related projects have brought in,
Mm-hmm.
seven figures, with the right amount of marketing behind it. And I think that this game is unique, was definitely unique at the time. And I think it could have gotten a better toehold, if it had been marketed better. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm familiar with. I won't say their name, but the company
Yep.
that did this, and they've done this to a lot of different games.
They have. I mean, I think that um, they're not the only ones who do it.
True, true.
I think WotC is infamous for
Oh,
developing a license, establishing an audience, and then just killing it. And they've done it so many times. It's really, really hard to think that they're not just trying to add more players to Magic, ultimately,
yeah.
because once you get someone used to the cadence of a Friday night get together, going and playing a physical game, and that game just dies out, what are they going to do? They're going to stop, or are they going to potentially start playing another option? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it's unfortunately more common. I think that there are some great licenses out there that have had a decent treatment given to them, a decent game, but the game just wasn't supported.
Right.
And I think, especially when you're talking about a competitive game, a head-to-head game, two-player game usually, um, if it doesn't have a number of factors included with its design, it's going to die. It's just a matter of time. I think it's, the idea of regular releases, they don't have to be, every couple of months. They could be twice a year, but something to look forward to, something on the roadmap that keeps people engaged. It keeps people looking at their collection going, well, there's always more coming. That's a good thing. I think having some sort of organized play also really
Mm-hmm.
important. I remember talking to some friends that work at Wizards of the Coast when the Transformers CCG came out,
Right.
and they were adamant early on, like, no organized play. We're not doing that. That's not the kind of game that it is. They didn't want to do it. And people just kept screaming for it because they wanted it. And so eventually they caved and did it, and that's been the model, especially, not that I want to talk about Wizards of the Coast the whole time, but like they did that a lot. Like they did it with Magic Commander format. Like Commander, they resisted it. They resisted it. Elder Dragon Highlander was super popular. And they resisted it for so long, and then they started to make the occasional Commander release. And they did it, and now it's their most popular format, even though they don't want it to be. It is, and so it's like, you kind of have to go with where the public wants you to go if you want to be successful. And so they keep making more releases and making more Commander decks, because what are you going to do? So yeah, I think it's just unfortunate that games like Transformers, like Conan, have come out and then just disappeared. Effectively. And
but you're right. My kids, they play. They go for the Commander decks because it's a nice all-in-one kind of a situation.
Yeah, I think it does sort of steer a little bit away from the head-to-head competitive, I need to buy several booster boxes model. And the idea that it's, one of a card makes it a lot easier to collect, a lot easier to build. The fact that there's all these precons out there that are ready to go with 100 cards, I think that's really great. And it also skews towards the multiplayer, which is also more engaging. The games will last a little bit longer because if there's 3 or 4 players, nobody can really run away with it without the other players keeping them in check. And that's a more comfortable, more casual pace, which I think is just a more positive game experience on the regular. Like, I still want to play competitive. I still want to have something where I'm like burning and racing to win quickly, but not on the regular. Like, that's not what I want to be doing. I want to mostly just be playing to play. If I build a deck, especially a 100-card Commander deck, I want to see it. And you're never going to see more than, maybe a third of your deck most of the time. So I could play 4 or 5 different games, and every game is completely different. So yeah, I want to see it unfold. I don't want to be like, it's turn 3, I already lost. Like, that's not fun. So
what's funny is you mentioned the multiplayer part of the card game.
Yeah.
And in this one that I made here, it's called Indie Comics Battlegrounds. I just designed it for somebody. I've been making games for about 10 years myself. So
awesome.
And that one does have not only a 1v1, but I built in multiplayer for that same reason that you're talking about, is you want to have what we call it, battle royal, Now, one thing I got to ask before, because Liz, you'll find out I'm like a squirrel on the road here. It's gonna go random. I was looking through the rule book because this is what I have so far is this box right here.
Okay.
And that's all the Conan I've been able to get. Right.
That's a decent amount, all things considered.
It is, and mostly I play solo. Okay. Which I do want to ask you about, but I could not find in that book for the life of me how many cards per deck.
Okay, it's in the glossary.
Oh,
on the definition of the deck.
Got it.
Yeah, I think it's 60 minimum for
60?
or is it 40 minimum? I actually don't recall off the top of my head.
Oh, believe me, I understand.
My decks are built, and I haven't made a new deck in a long time. So, but yeah, it's in the glossary, and I'm sure I can dig it up. But
no, I got books here. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, the deck has very, very light basic construction rules. The faux deck has very specific deck construction rules. So that's the one that's kind of critical to making it all balanced.
Well, the one thing I noticed, what got me into it, to be honest with you, is I was looking for, I play solo a lot.
Yep.
And this one, they said this one for solo, you don't need to do anything out the box. It's pretty much solo ready. And they were right.
How do you play it solo?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
All I do, I have the main deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I have all the foes. I have them. What I'm going to do, brutal honesty, I'm going to put them into books, right? Group all the enemies like, oh, we're going to Tehran this time. So it's going to be that kind of thing. But then I have the stack of foes. So then I just draw the foes as if it were the other player. 5, 3 + 1 and all that.
Yeah.
And then I play them out. And then I just draw from my main deck 1 card each for each of the different each of the different foes that are there, and then just play my
Right.
hand as normal.
So I think the only thing with that, I think that works, frankly. But I think the only thing with that is you're obviously not you're not deciding what the foes get. The foes are getting completely random cards.
Exactly.
So that could be good. It could be bad. But and then obviously the intelligence that you would get in a two-player game, meaning if a foe has a stamina of 3,
Mm-hmm.
right, a prowess of 3, and you play a 4 prowess move on them, you would have to put the damage on them before
Right.
the move is even revealed, so that it's a big move. You're not going to know that in solo, right? You're
Exactly.
going to flip the move, they'll take the damage, and I suppose they could kill themselves with their own move. You'd have to figure out, like, maybe they can't or something.
Yeah.
But, get themselves down to 1 health, I guess. But yeah, you could do that. I think that especially as hard as it can be to find players, I think that works. Totally.
And that is pretty much how I was doing. Like, you can't kill yourself with your own move.
Right.
But yeah, and I don't flip them. I don't flip their move over until until after I played mine. So I mean, I don't know anything ahead of time.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I love that idea of the matching symbols, which got me at first. I thought it was just a number on a side. I didn't realize.
No, they actually line up. Yeah. That I really there was a Decipher game. I think Beyblade had something where you had the tops of the cards and they were compared. But I don't recall if that was just number or if they actually. I don't think they really lined up. I don't remember off the top of my head. But it just felt like it was a good. I really wanted to capture the feeling of there were certain things that I felt were important in the game. Like I had solicited designs while I was at the company and seen several, and they meaning Conan Properties looked at them and were like, no. Every time they missed, every time it was just not what they were looking for. And the more I talked to them, and I had been rereading all of the books, I kind of was like, I think I know what you're looking for, because they kind of described it a certain way. And one of the things that I think is important to note when it comes to Conan Properties and Conan is that when you talk to anyone who is a literary fan of Conan first, right? They read the books first, they're Conan. That is a very specific Conan. That Conan exists, and he has a very specific set of attributes and rules about who he is and what he is. Then there are people who love Conan because of the Arnold movies.
Yeah.
It is not look, I love the movies, but other than a couple of names, that really isn't Conan from the perspective of Robert E. Howard wrote. And the Conan Properties always struggled against the idea of the fur diaper, as they called it.
Yep.
Right? The look of this muscle-bound, kind of not so intelligent brute, which is not what he wrote, right? They always said he was more panther-like, like sleek, dangerous, muscled, but not muscle-bound.
Right.
And so a lot of the artwork that exists for Conan, it is a lot of that, and a lot of muscle-bound, big guy, and they were definitely steering things towards the panther look and the dangerous, very, very, very intelligent, very smart character. And so I just was looking at a lot of things I had experience with, and a lot of, I think, I was really excited by Gladiator, the movie Gladiator. There's aspects of Gladiator that I put into the game because there were things I just really, really liked about some of the arena scenes that happened, and which I can come back to that. But I really wanted the Conan in the books can go into a room, and everybody in that room wants to kill him, and he can take them all out and walk out. How do you replicate that in a game? So I really wanted the idea that he's in the middle, and foes could be coming at him from all sides, and how does he deal with that? So that's where I really wanted to have the zones, and just having the idea that as the foe player, you can decide, do I want to spread my guys out and hit him from all sides, or do I want them to be in the same zone so they're harder to deal with? Because conceptually, the idea is if there's two guys coming at you straight on, if you focus on one, the other one is a risk to you.
Yep.
So you can put your move against one of them, but it's going to cost you more prowess to do that because you're not acknowledging the other threat. If you put your move between them so that they're both being addressed by your move, then it's a normal cost. But the risk is the other player knows that, so they might have put all of the offensive icons facing the middle. So that's where it's sort of a guessing game, a little bit of strategy that goes into it. It's not totally random. I mean, unless you're playing solo, of course. But if you're playing with a person who kind of is really thinking about it, and then you get to know your opponent, and like, oh well, they like to play a lot of moves that have offense on both sides. So I want to tempt them into putting a move in the middle so that I can really beat down on them. Or this is a really cagey player. They're always really cautious. They don't mind paying a little bit of extra prowess to be safe. So I'll put all my offense on the outside. So that was that was the idea, and by spreading them out, normally with most Conans, you can only play moves into 2 zones, so you can guarantee a hit by spreading out to 3 zones or even 4 zones, which again, it just gives you a lot of strategic options and really getting to decide how you want it to unfold, and also taking a look at what's in your hand and going, well, the moves I have for the foes that were drawn really support me doing this versus, oh gosh, I really don't have a lot of good stuff. I really need them to hang together. And then I made the veteran keyword on foes, which is totally inspired by Gladiator, because it was really the idea there. He was thrown into the Colosseum, and he said, basically, who's served? And people are like, I served with you, and and I'm a veteran. And all the veterans, he started just calling out maneuvers, and they just did them because they're veterans. They've worked together. They've been in organized combat. And so the idea that veterans, if you have 2 veterans next to each other, they sync right up, and you can't put a move between them, because that's the idea. They would go back to back, and they would work together. So having 3 foes together in a zone, if they're all veterans, those are 3 together. You can't touch the middle guy. That middle guy is definitely going to be unblocked, because the outside guys will protect them so they can get their hit in. And again, like, that was the idea, was just, it's narrative, it's evocative, and I really enjoyed playing it that way, because it's just like, oh, I can totally see it in my mind. Everything about the game is very it's a card game. It's abstract by its very nature, but I really wanted to feel a lot of the danger and a lot of the threats of what's going on. So
and when I do solo as a designer myself, when I do play on the other side, I do play as what would hurt me the most, kind of thing. So I will. I mean, because otherwise, it's just easy win, right? You can stack it to make it. But I really liked also how you had in there, and please forgive me, I believe it was called Savage, where like you can't. The animal has to be there by its. Like,
they're not going to work together,
exactly.
Right? So there's 3 levels of cooperation, 3.5. There's the veterans who completely work together. They know exactly what they're doing. Then there's just people or creature types. As long as they're the same type of animal, creature, human, they can work together, but they're not efficient. But they can at least share a zone. And then you might have 2 animals that normally could work together, but since they're savage, they don't work well with others. They're just not. They're never going to do that. And then you have solitary, which is the ultimate of, like, that's the only foe you can have on the table. Like, it's just too much to deal with. And then, like huge tentacled things, and it's like a really massive foe, which again also brings back that Conan dealing with the big snake, dealing with the big monster feeling.
That I was kind of wondering how you were going to do it, but when I read Tathamon's card, I'm like, that you couldn't have had him any other way.
Yeah, I think that there was there were 2 expansions in development, and Tathamon was going to be someone he could actually face at some point.
Oh, really?
But there were there were foe items, magical items. So like him, if he could play him and play his ring on him, then he would actually become a threat. and he would be a sorcerer and using magic icons, and really like you'd build your deck to really be, he would hit you really hard. But thematically in the story, the way that he was put into the game, he's a big threat, but he doesn't directly, he's always shadowy behind the scenes.
Yes.
So the idea that Conan is frustrated by him, is attacked by him, but can't actually, it'd be like swinging his sword and he turns into mist or whatever. Like that's the idea. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks. That I really wanted to capture that too, because he was a constant source of frustration for Conan, and a threat, but obviously one that he couldn't directly face. He was always dealing with him through others.
Yeah, and I liked the major foes idea. I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different Conans. I wrote them down just so I remembered what I have.
Yeah.
I have 5 different Conans. I got 3 of the ultra. That was the thing I wanted to ask you. Not so much the ultra rare thing. Locations.
Yes.
How many did you have planned for this?
Well, there were 2, I think, in the base set.
Yes.
A rare and an ultra rare.
Yeah, I got the ultra. Yeah.
Awesome. That's the Iglophilian Peaks, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so we had a lot. In the first expansion, there were a lot. It was something that I wanted to include more in the base set, but the base set was already very large, and we really just decided to focus on the core mechanics. There were a lot of things I wanted to add, but I didn't want it to be too much. And it was designed with the idea of regular releases, but again, just didn't pan out that way. I'm sure you've seen, there was reference to the thief step versus the warrior step. All of that was developed. It all exists. Some up here, some files. But yeah, that was also the idea. Is look, as a character, he was not just a warrior. He was a thief. Like that was a big part of who he was, and so he would sneak in places and steal stuff. Just big part of his story. So the idea that you could take a look at your setup and go, you know what? I'm really not in a good fighting space, but I could definitely go sneak and steal something. You get to make a choice. I want to go this path or I want to go that path. And the basics of it was, there was a deck. Each player would have an additional like small deck of cards with items in them,
right?
That were double-sided. And so whatever you added to your deck, you would add, I think it was 3 cards of that type. So if it was a chalice, a golden chalice, you'd have 3 golden chalices in your deck. And 2 of those golden chalices, well, one of them was like really good. One of them was like, it was okay. And one of them was probably like a bad trap type thing. So you'd be going for it. But you don't know what you're going to get. So at the end of it, because that happened a lot in the stories, like he'd be going and then suddenly it's like, oh my God, it's some huge alien creature thing or whatever. So you don't even know what you're going to get. Unless, again, that's where cards come in. You could scout ahead. You could maybe look and peek at the things. But anyway, so that was the idea. And so you'd still be using the moves, but instead of playing foes to attack, those would be foes that be laid out in a specific pattern to guard. And you'd have to use your moves to get past them using your agility icon. So if you could hit them with a foot icon, basically showing that you're silently, stealthily creeping past them, then you bypass that guard and you beat that guard. So it's a similar idea in that you still have to deal with foes, but you're not killing them. You could still attack them. You could choose to not do that. But if you can't kill them in one move, then they raise the alarm and the whole step is over. So you have to also decide, are they crunchy enough where I can definitely get them in one shot? Oh, but if they block it, then I'm not going to get them in that one shot and I'm going to lose the thing. So again, choices. You get to decide how you're going to do it and how you're going to get to the treasure. So that was the another piece. There were some other things that were kind of scaling up. So we had minor foes and major foes. There was a level of epic foes.
Oh, okay.
So when you discard minor foes to play major foes, you discard major foes to play epic foes.
Okay.
So, and they were very, very big. Akin to some of the very largest major foes that existed in the base game.
Yeah. I also saw you had for one of the promos. I didn't get it yet, but I plan on trying to hunt it down. Amra, the lion.
Yes.
Was piracy going to be a big thing in there too?
Yeah. The theme of the first expansion was it was savage Savage Sales and something. Anyway, piracy was sorcery and piracy were the two big themes. So it was going to have a lot of magical artifact type things,
Yeah.
sorcerers, Stygians, and then piracy and a lot of aquatic creatures, aquatic locations. So yeah, that was definitely a theme, a big theme that was in the first expansion, because he spent a lot of time as a pirate too. So
absolutely. Yeah, how do I want to ask this next one? Well, I'll start it off this way. If there was one thing that you could tell yourself when you first started, what would you say?
To go back in time and talk to myself as I was developing Conan?
Yes.
I would say fight harder against the ultra rares.
Yeah?
Yeah, I didn't like him. I didn't like the way they were implemented, and that was forced on me, and I didn't want it. I am a player first, and I believe players are, I don't want to say more important, but as important as collectors. And if you make gameplay collectible to the point where people have to buy lots and lots to get just basic staple things, that's a fail. So I always thought parallel art, a lot of what a lot of games do now, right? Different treatments, different things, but mechanically, the game, the rare is the rarest type of card there is.
Right.
So it'd be a parallel set. You still have the chase. You still want to get these things as a collector, but it's not exclusive gameplay. I just think that's completely unfair and discourages people from getting into a game, to be honest. It is the number one complaint I get to this day for people who are trying to complete a set, because frankly, it's impossible. I mean, myself, I lost everything in a storage unit screw up where they sold everything off, and so it's all gone. I don't even have a sealed box myself. I have nothing. But I've put together a set, and I'm 2 cards shy of a complete set, and they're both ultra rares. And
if I have them and you need them,
I will let you know. I can probably do a straight swap or something, or I can fill in a bunch of gaps for you. But I'll get there eventually. I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's more of a just frustrating that it happened kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've heard this. I have told this story before, but I will just give you the highlights. So the company, I am not saying their name, I guess. I've said it, but it's fine. The company that published the game made a deal with Conan Properties where you pay an upfront licensing fee, and then you agree to pay royalties for sales.
Right.
So they did that. They agreed to an upfront cost. They never paid it. They planned on paying it out of the proceeds of the sales of the game. That was just their approach. Not necessarily the most, I don't want to say ethical, but just like not really the way you're supposed to do things. But it happens. And the game didn't perform because they took out one ad and they went to one trade show, and that was all they ever did. And so they decided to scrap it. And in so doing, they took all the product and said, "Oh, we're not paying the fee." They never paid it. They just gave them all the printed product. Now, Conan Properties is a licensing agency. They are not a warehouse. They are not a sales product, physical product thing. And at the time, they were focused on making the Jason Momoa live action movie. Like, they were already in another direction. They weren't even thinking about it. So they told me for months, all of their offices were full of cases of Conan CCG, just sitting in people's behind their chairs, whatever. They just stuffed it in there because they didn't have anywhere to put it. Right. Again, that's not their business model. And I told them, I was like, I'll help you sell them. I will do whatever it takes. Just ship me some product and I'll figure it out. Or just, I can broker things. I can send you addresses. You can just ship direct. Yep. They're like, yeah, we'll let you know. We'll let you know. Again, they told me they were focused on the live action endeavors. And 6 months goes by of like radio silence. And then I reach out and I'm like, hey, I'd really like to pick this up. Can we, and they're like, oh, it's gone. What do you mean it's gone? They threw it all away.
Oh.
So 85% of the print run ended up in a dumpster. And so that's why it's really hard to get anything.
Oh my.
Because there's just not that much out there. So if you see sealed product online and it's expensive, it's for a reason. There's just really none out there. Unfortunately. And yeah, I mean, talk about just a complete gut punch
Mhm.
thing. It's like, oh, this thing that was never marketed, that you always had a dream that you could bring it back or get your hands on the product. Like if they just shipped it all to me, I would have been selling it. I would have paid them. Everything
Yep.
would have been fine. But again, it wasn't where they were at the time. Like the gaming, it wasn't even really a thing for them at that point. There was the Age of Conan video game, MMORPG,
Yep.
and that was also sort of where they were focused. Some of the concept art from that actually made it into the game because they just
Oh,
provided samples of things. So the Sumerian shield, a couple of the Sumerian character foes
right.
are actually illustrations from the video game.
So if you could,
So,
uh,
so, so if I could go back in time just to retouch on that, I would say no ultra rares or ultra rares that are only parallel. That would be the number one thing I would change because I feel like that turns people off.
yeah,
If you have a huge game that has a huge following and you want to squeeze a little more by doing that, you can get away with it usually. They did that with their other big popular game
yeah,
because they had a huge audience at that point and they could get away with it. Also, mechanically speaking, most of those ultra rares were cards you only wanted one of anyway. And I tried to at least push to say, can I make them all cards you only want one of? And they were like, no, you need to make staple cards part of it.
wow,
Again, it's one of those things. I remember when I was consulting with Decipher back when they were doing, what was it? Star Wars Jedi Knights, I think it was.
oh yeah, yeah,
And there were decisions that were being made in the game by the marketing department, where the marketing department said, we need a promo card and we need it to be powerful. They just were like straight up. And it was a very powerful card. And it was just like, why? Like the game designers, I remember them going, we don't want to do it, but we have to do it.
yeah,
And that kind of thing happens a lot more often than you would think. Sometimes it's the licensor that's
yeah.
doing it. I remember when episode 1 came out, Star Wars episode 1, the Lucasfilm would not take no for an answer, that Decipher incorporate pod racing into every game.
Oh my lord.
So that's why Young Jedi has pod racing, and the regular Star Wars CCG has pod racing in it, which doesn't fit at all. But
Right.
again, they were like, they felt like it was an important aspect of the movie at that time, so they wanted it in the games. And it's like, that's where game design of a license can be really tricky, because if they can actually make that level of demands where they can change the design vision for the game, it could be fine. You could find a way to satisfy it and it doesn't disrupt things, or it could be completely disruptive.
Yeah.
I don't know that it was terribly disruptive. I think they found a way to temper it, but yeah, talk about frustrating. Like, I'm getting an order to make something that I had no plans to make mechanically in the game.
Yeah.
Thankfully, Conan Properties was not like that. They were not. They were really focused on names and artwork.
Yeah.
That was their big thing. They wanted to make sure he was represented well. They wanted to make sure that the universe was sort of respected. They didn't want somebody with a blaster rifle or some other weird thing in there. Which, total respect. I get it.
Yeah.
There's a promo, cleave from shoulder to groin,
Yep.
which literally shows somebody getting sliced in half, and you can kind of see both of them. And in Conan, the Conan character is sort of going through a swing, and you can see the sword. That sword specifically went through 5 revisions, I think.
Oh
where
wow.
they just kept going, nah, that blade doesn't look right. Now that blade looks too fantasy, or what? Like, it was crazy, but I get it. I totally get that level of control. You don't want to introduce something in the universe that just feels wrong. So I respect that level of involvement, because they're just trying to protect their IP, their intellectual property, right? It's not like they're trying to interfere with what you're doing with the game. They just want to make sure that the whole reason why you license it is because of that level of protection, right?
Right.
If no one was minding the store, the license wouldn't mean anything. So I never had a problem with that. It was just funny how it worked out. Oh, you pulled it up. There you go.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard to see there, but let's see if we can't get it. There we go. That honestly, that is I tried to license Jason and Freddy because I made
Yeah.
a horror board game, and
Yeah.
just like you said, there were certain things that when I wasn't sure that it would fit perfectly with what I was trying to do,
Mhm.
so I ended up going with my legally distinct from yet similar to. But yeah, that they focus so much on the weapon shows that they really do care about the
Yeah.
property.
Actually, it wasn't even his weapon. Sorry, it was the weapon being held by the guy being sliced. That was the
Well,
weapon.
really,
Yeah, that was the one they kept pushing back on, because
that is interesting.
it had like little tines on it, and then it didn't, and then the curvature of it was too. It was funny. Yeah.
That is cool. I mean,
Yeah.
I know I'm sure it had to be frustrating, and God bless you for it. But I do find that kind of lore and thing interesting
I do
from.
too. I do. Yeah, I like the little backstories and behind the scenes stuff too. So
Would you rather keep? And again, this is just I know I want to get into the future because
sure.
as much I've been reading Conan since the 70s. Since as early as I learned reading on these Savage Sword of Conan books.
Wow, that's cool. That's very
It's
cool. Yeah.
when I say I love this property, I do,
Yeah.
and I would love to see this come back, and I know you would as well. Would
Absolutely.
you want it to come back as the CCG model or LCG?
That's a very interesting question, and I could see both. I think that it really depends on what the long-term vision is and the long-term goal. I think that LCGs are more like a board game. And the way board games work is there are these sales plateaus where the base game will sell X amount.
Yeah.
The first expansion will always step down. The expansion never sells more than the base game. That's just
Right.
not how it works, right? So every subsequent expansion drops.
Yep.
So at some point, you either need to make a new version and relaunch it, or you need to let the game die, right?
Yes.
So I think in LCG, from a playing standpoint, I definitely want to provide people with the ability to play as much as possible with what they've got, and give everybody X copies of every card, all of that. I don't think it's not really a cost issue for production. I think it's just a how does it reach its audience? Like how is it received? There are aspects of a CCG that I find extremely appealing. Limited play, sealed deck, opening packs.
Yep.
I love that. It's my favorite way to play almost any game because you kind of have to manufacture your win. You can't.
Yeah.
It's not handed to you, and everybody's in the same boat essentially, where you're just all dealing with random stuff, and you try to put something together and hope for the best. I love that. That's generally why I play with oversized decks in most games, because I don't want it to be predictable. I don't want it to be tight and tuned. I want that experience of, oh gosh, I drew this and this. I don't know how these work together. Let's see what we can do. So I think from a collectability standpoint, CCGs are better. From a various levels of gameplay perspective, definitely better. You can do drafting, you can do sealed, limited play. I don't know. I've been struggling with this for a while. I proposed the last submission that I made to Conan Properties. I proposed doing it as a CCG because I felt like it honored sort of where it came from, and I still think there's a way to do it where it's not abusive to players, where you can get away with buying a box and have most everything you need, but still being able to offer the retail aspect of things too, right? Where stores can have booster boxes and sell pack by pack, which is part of what we want, right? Like being able to support retail and not sidestep them, I think is really important. I think gaming in general, especially card games and things where you need to be there in person, you need a place, right?
Yeah.
Not all games are played in people's living rooms. Sometimes they're played in game stores. So if I can do something that helps them, and LCG just doesn't help them the same way. It's just not how it works. So
that is a good point you brought up, because it does tie in with what you said earlier about the ultra rares.
yeah,
I think the CC. I'm an old school rares chaser myself, right, from all different kinds of games. But yeah, the ultra rare model that certain company put out, the way they did it,
Mm-hmm.
them and Score, by the way, Score was also
Oh
terrible.
yeah.
But that's what put me off of the CCG model was companies like that. If you could bring it back in a way where, as you mentioned before, the ultra rares are more evenly distributed, or that they're only the one shots that you need, or alt art kind of a deal.
Yeah.
I think that is the way to go.
I think
And
now there are enough options to do like what Flesh and Blood had done,
yeah,
where there's different levels of treatments. Like you could have the same card 5 different ways: a foil, a cold foil, whatever whatever you
yeah,
want to call it. The collectability, the chase is absolutely there, but the basic gameplay is maintained. And
yes,
knowing that all of these cards are available, there are a lot of games over the years that have been designed. Pokemon is one where there's a formula for designing any card,
yeah,
and every single attribute, every single icon, every single thing that appears on that card is part of that formula. The rarity is part of that formula.
yeah,
Now, I don't like that. I think it just skews towards adding more power to rarer cards. And I don't think that's really the right way. I've always viewed it as rares are cards that you don't need a lot of, or that are very niche. Like you
mm-hmm.
might want 3 copies of this thing, but it only really works in 1 or 2 specific decks for a very specific reason. So you can let people chase them if they really, really want it. But that's edge case, right? It's not the general like, oh my God, everybody needs 3 of this card because it's just a really powerful card. Like, I hate that. I think that's just nonsense. The secondary market loves it because those cards become very valuable, but it's
Yeah.
awful for players. I don't like that at all.
Like you said with Thotham, I only have one of them, but
Yeah.
I don't need more than that.
If you get another one, it's trade bait. And that was the idea too. Like a lot of the big foes were made unique on purpose because I really wanted people to trade them.
Yeah.
And have them be out there, because I'd rather see more of them getting played than them ending up in somebody's binder. You're not going to play 3 copies if you could. Like I don't think you would, but I suppose you could. But thankfully,
Yeah,
I made sure you couldn't do that.
yeah, that would be killer right there.
Yeah.
Wow, we've been on for 42 minutes already. I'm sorry to take up so much of your day.
No, it's all good.
What is the future of this? What are we looking at? What are we trying?
So I gotta say, it's just been extremely frustrating. There are licensing issues that we all have to deal with, and Conan as a license, the way that copyright works in the United States is not the same as it is around the world. If you lived in Spain and you wanted to make a Conan game and use the likeness of Conan and the names and everything, go nuts. You can apparently do that. You can sell it, and it's all because it's in the public domain at that point. In the United States, I believe, well, I thought it was supposed to be 2024, but now I've been reading it's 2027, I think. It's supposed to be, it was like 70 years after the author's death, and then, Disney keeps pushing the goalposts.
Oh my
Because
God.
that's, they don't want anybody else making a Mickey, which, that was never the intent of the copyright rule. It was never meant to be something that you hold on to forever and no one else can ever do it. The idea was you get it, you benefit from it financially, and then eventually it enters the public domain so that others can create with it to make new things. That was the intent originally of the copyright law. But certain companies like Disney have made it their business model to say it's ours and no one else can do it. So I was thinking I would wait. I may be forced to wait until he enters the public domain, but then I'll be fighting with, 100 other games, because as soon as it reaches public domain, there's going to be 100 Conan games. It's just, it's inevitable.
Right.
But I did reach out to them, I think 3 years ago now. They sent me the submission forms. I submitted everything, and I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Like it'll be 2 months, and then I'll get an email going, "Hey, we haven't looked at it yet, but we had questions." And I'm like, "Okay." And it's been like that for the past 3 years. And now my last email, it's been like a year since the last email I got from them. I had a good relationship with them. They respected the fact that I respected the license. They know that I'll do it right, but I know that they're definitely pulled in a lot of different directions, and there's only like 2 or 3 people even working in the company in that area. So if
Yeah.
it's not a high volume, high monetary endeavor, it's a low priority for them. And I think we don't know where a Conan CCG would even go. If I go crowdfund, it could hit 6 figures. It could hit
Mhm.
7 figures if it's done right. But crowdfunding in and of itself is a very expensive endeavor if you want to do it right.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. I have a lot ready to go,
Hmm.
and redesigned all of the templates have been re-engineered. A lot of things have been changed and added to enhance the game, because I think it was good for when it came out, but I think evolution and things you learn, and
Of course.
I think it's even better than it was when it was printed now. But I just need the opportunity. So,
Yeah.
I've reached out to them. I've done a few other interviews like this, and I've sent them the videos to it. I've sent them links. But I just, if they're not saying anything, I don't know what else to do. Like, I think the only way that anything's going to happen at this point is if there is a groundswell of some kind, where
Yep.
maybe others reach out to them, or create some kind of campaign. Which I don't. It's not about me. I really want to see this game come out. It's not an ego thing. Um, I'm fully prepared to pay an upfront fee and get this going, and get it published. It's just they gotta give me the green light, and they just haven't done that.
Yeah.
So it was like I said, like 2 years of just back and forth, delay, delay, delay. Oh yeah, we haven't had a chance. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Um, then they were asking me about art sources, and they have some arts available. I mean, they did look through some of it, and they were definitely engaging. It wasn't like they said no. They never. If you just tell me no, I can move on with my life. But it was
Right.
never a no. It was always a we'll get back to you, with the intention of actually getting back to me. So.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see. In the
And
meantime, I'm doing other work and other designs, and
what do you have? What do you have coming?
so I
If
don't.
you're allowed to say. I know
Yeah,
how
no.
NDAs
There's
work.
some that I'm not allowed to disclose, but I am working on an adaptation of The Boys,
Oh
which
wow.
actually has some similarities mechanically to Conan, because I had demoed Conan for them. I actually wanted to get the Red Sonja license to do a Red Sonja game,
Perfect.
with this, so they could be compatible, but officially not compatible because of the
Yeah.
whole, thing. And that's owned by Dynamite Comics, and they were like, actually, we want you to do a Boys thing, and I was super excited. But then I realized it's just the comics art. It's not the TV show,
Okay.
and a lot of what I've been developing, there's only like 2 pictures of some characters. So I
Hmm.
can't use a character if there's only 2 pieces of art.
Yeah.
And so it's extremely limiting. What's available is some cases I just can't even use a character. There's just not enough. So it's become quite challenging. Um, and if you've read the comics,
Yep.
they're extremely graphic, and I don't mean from a violent standpoint. From a sexual standpoint, they're very, very um, graphic, which also limits my art options, because some of those great shots, they're totally nude or whatever, and I can't use it. So it's been a process. Still trying to work through it. So we'll see. But
Well, I'm glad we're going to see more from you. That's for sure. Because this, and again, I know I keep coming back to Conan, but that's where I know
yeah,
you from. You did something that I think nobody else is. I've never seen it before with that combat system with Conan.
mhm.
And if you can do that with him, I can't wait to see what you can do with Homelander and the boys, or anything else really. I mean,
Sure.
it's really, I really am, I'm impressed with it. I really like it.
There was a game that I worked on, a CCG that I worked on for Fleer, back in the early 2000s. It was called Ophidian 2350, and it was a straight up CCG. It was put out by Fleer. Um, had a lot of issues.
Hmm.
I think like just some of the art was just really inconsistent. But that all sort of collapsed in and of itself. And that was another one where there was a lot of physical product that Fleer actually went under. They were millions in the hole.
Yeah.
And the product surfaced back in like 2015. Someone in Texas bought it, had it shipped down from, I think, Vermont, I think it
Mm-hmm.
was. And it was like basically a whole tractor trailer worth. It was a lot of product. And his plan was to sell it and potentially add more. So I connected with them and we launched a Kickstarter. It was successful for Ophidian
Good.
2360, which was an LCG model. There were 3 packs of 2 constructed decks each. So the idea is if you get all 3 packs, you have everything you can mix and match, and make decks. And it maintained the basic mechanics, but made some improvements, made some tweaks, and visually just night and day difference. I think it was a great step up visually. And I made a few little promo expansion packs. There was like a political one and some other things,
Mm-hmm.
some promo packs, and it was fine. And then we decided, really wanted to take it sort of to the next level, and did a Kickstarter right before COVID, called Arenaverse, which leverages the same universe but sort of stepped away from Ophidian as the name, and just really tried to create a new thing. And it's a futuristic gladiatorial combat where it plays, it's a 2-player game that could go 3-player, 4-player. It's fine.
Right.
And everybody has a team of their own gladiators, and it's really, really engaging. Like, it is the kind of game where it's not about what you own. It's about you as a player, which appeals to some people and doesn't appeal to others, because some people want that random luck factor. But if you're a really, really good player and you have a deck full of commons, and I'm playing against somebody who's just not a good player and they have a deck full of rares, I'm going to win. 99% of the time, I'm going to win because it's about player skill. And I have
Mm-hmm.
never seen another game where player skill is so relevant to how the game is played. So anyway, long story short, Arenaverse, the base set was developed, printed for prototyping purposes, and it's in great shape. There's 2 more expansions. We're talking, 800 cards, something like that. It's a lot. There's a lot of content, and through COVID and other things that really delayed things, it's been a really long process. It's been delayed
Yeah.
for a long time. But I think within the next 6 months, I want to get everything out the door, get it printed and get it fulfilled, and see where it goes. I'm really happy with it as a game. I think it's a solid game. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
That one is definitely worth checking out. I think you can still get Ophidian 2350 everywhere. You can get Ophidian 2360 directly from the company Hack and Slash Games.
Okay.
And yeah, it's super playable. It's super repeat playable, which is great. So if
Nice.
you have the right play group with people of sort of similar skill levels, super satisfying, and really enjoyable. So and the idea that there's a little bit of something for everyone. It is set in the future, so there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of future stuff, but there's aliens, there's demons coming from parallel dimensions. There's a lot of different things sort of mashed together too. So
Right.
how you develop your team and what team you select, and then how you build your deck to work with that team. There's a lot of meat on the bone for that game. I think I'm really, really, really happy with where it ended up. So
That's good. Yeah, I wrote that one down myself. In fact, I put the link over here in the chats and stuff just
awesome.
so we'd remember it. 'Cause that really does sound interesting. Normally, I'm not a sci-fi kind of guy, but that one,
Yeah,
I
it's
was like,
combat. I mean, it's the
yeah,
theme is. I don't want to say the theme is secondary. It's not secondary, but it is. If you like combat type games, it's a
yep,
great combat game. Yeah, and there's mechanics in there where you have reinforcements. If your gladiators die, you can bring out reinforcements, and the ones that you select can impact the game too. So
nice.
that construction is definitely a factor. It's important. It's not a game that I would just want to walk in with random stuff. But the choices you can make on how your deck plays itself out is also very, very cool. Just the way that it works. So
Okay.
yeah,
Well, we've hit about that time, but I want to let you know that if you have anything else that's coming out, I would love to have you back on to talk about it.
sure,
Uh,
absolutely.
I hope you don't have to wait until it goes public domain,
Me
but at
too.
least you already know you have a ton of fan base.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, no, I get emails on the regular too, and it's like I really want to. I want to give something. I want to get this out there so that people can enjoy it, and hopefully soon.
Where's the best place to get you?
Facebook. I will put my thing into the comments here.
Okay.
Let me do that. I also do attend as many cons as I can. So I try to always have stuff with me. I always have my Conan decks with me, for example. So if anybody wants to play, I always try to make that happen. So
which one's your favorite? If you had to pick, which Conan's your favorite?
Which Conan? It's a tie between Conan the Savage and Conan the Destroyer, I think, the mounted one.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I have a whole deck that's all mounted, and so the bows are mounted, the allies are mounted, everyone's mounted. So like I have a lot of mounted moves. So
that is awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to put it in the chat. It's just asking me for permission to join StreamYard, I guess. There we go. Oh, it says this comment has failed to post.
Oh my goodness.
Well, anyway, it's facebook.com/JasonGameDesigner.
Okay. What was I gonna ask you? You ever have one of those where it's in your head and then it just flies
all the
out?
time? It only gets worse as you get older.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I can't believe we're not friends on this thing yet, on this Facebook thing. I might have to,
let's rectify that.
I have to hit add. That is weird. Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, again, really, really happy to have you on, and it's just you seem like a really nice guy, and that's always important. You're approachable. You seem friendly. You always seem to just be there for the fans, and that means as much to me as the game itself. Is if somebody's out there and ready for people. You seem passionate, and I love it.
I think it's important. I think it's a big part of it. Like connection really matters, and I take feedback very seriously, and I want to give somebody a good experience. But if there's ways to improve that, my door is always open.
Excellent. Again, I appreciate you coming on, and I hope we can see you back here. And even if you just want to chat normal, just chat regularly. You know where I'm at.
Great. Thanks.
All right. All righty, bud.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.